It's the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. Welcome on back. In today's episode, we're going to be checking out all of our 2025 predictions. It's going to be controversial. Stick around and enjoy. Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode 6 of 2025. We're flying through the episodes. We're getting closer and closer to the season officially kicking off. It's only roughly 3 weeks until the opening match of the season. So content's building up. We're getting there. Today we're going to be looking at all of my 2025 predictions as they stand right now. There's going to be some controversial picks, I'm sure. Not everybody will agree with all of these, but we're gonna give it a crack. We're going to see what we think, and let me know down in the comments below what you think about all of these predictions and what you think is going to happen in 2025. Before we jump into that, footy season unofficially kicks off this weekend. We've got the first games of the season, pre-season that is, with the Indigenous All-Stars game against Fremantle on Saturday night, plus other teams starting their practice games as well over the weekend / into next week. So stick around. We're going to be watching them all, and I'll be giving you the breakdown of every single match. I'll probably be watching most of them as many times as I can. So I'm going to try and bring you the best content on all of them as possible. So stick around over the coming weeks. We'll be delving right into all of that. Also, over on the YouTube channel, if you're not on YouTube right now watching this, or listening to this, head over there, All Aussie Rules. There's season previews going live every day for each club we're working our way through. We're roughly about 6 or 7 episodes in so far, so I think Geelong might have come out yesterday. We're going to have a couple Gold Coast GWS coming out this week. Next week's going to be Hawthorn, Melbourne, North Melbourne, into Port Adelaide as well. So we're flying our way through the teams. So stick around, go check that out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on them all. And hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching this. If this is on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And without any further ado, let's jump into our predictions. And I mean, the most obvious spot to start is with the Premiers. So we'll get them up. And that's what we got. We got Geelong Cats as my prediction for premiership at the moment. Is it a great prediction? We'll see. They obviously went pretty close last year. Throughout some of the season, they were the best team. They won their first 7 games. They struggled through the middle season, came home quite strongly. As I said, I did a season prediction video for them. That would have gone out on the YouTube channel just yesterday, so go check that out. I think that's a really good look at Geelong's list, and potentially could be a really good season for the Cats. They weren't far off last year making the grand final. They obviously just lost to the Lions after hitting the front in the last quarter. So I've got them as my number 1 pick for the premiership. Will I change my mind before the season officially starts? Maybe. Who would really know, I guess. But yeah, that's where I sit at the moment with the premiership. After that, my next couple picks. Brisbane, I think. They haven't got worse. Yes, they lost Joe Danaher, but overall, I think they're still pretty much one of the best teams, if not the best team in the AFL. They're going to be right up there, I think, in all honesty. Collingwood, I think they've gone all in on this season, so they should be up there, thereabouts. I think it's a pretty even competition at the moment, so it can be quite difficult to narrow it down. I think there's probably another 5 or 6 teams that at this stage you certainly wouldn't be writing off for the premiership in 2025. It's crazy that we're in 2025. We'll jump into the next one, which is minor premiers. I've gone Carlton, I think. I think they're going to be a competitive team again this year. Obviously, they were very close to being good last year. They were top 4 for a fair chunk of the season. Their end of season, once injuries hit, wasn't a great finish, but I think we'll see them bounce back again this year if they can stay fit and healthy. They also don't have the toughest draw this year, so I think there's every chance for them to be minor premiers. I don't know if they'll go into premiership. As I said, they weren't my pick for the premiership, but I think they will be a team that's certainly up there in the top 4 throughout the home and away season. And then it will just be a matter of trying to peak at the right time to have a crack at the premiership. My other picks for minor premiers would be the ones that I've mentioned: Geelong, Brisbane, Collingwood, maybe even a Fremantle, in all honesty, could be sneaking up there. So I wouldn't write them off. Next up, after that, we're going to go check out Wooden Spoon. This one's probably the least controversial pick I'm going to put up here today. It's the Tiggy Boys. There's not much hope for them, let's be honest. I'd love to see them win a couple games and not win that Wooden Spoon, but then someone's got to win it. Someone's got to be last. And unfortunately, at the moment, it's hard to see it not being Richmond for the second year in a row. Last year was a year that went really bad due to injuries. They weren't terrible early season, but injuries just hit and they really struggled. They've lost a lot of players from then, so it's hard to see this year being easier for them. In all honesty, I'm not even going to mention any other teams because I don't think anyone else is as bad as Richmond heading into 2025. So they are my one and only pick at the moment for that Wooden Spoon. We're now just going to jump into my Brownlow prediction. And once again, it is the same every year, but one of these years, the umpires are finally going to acknowledge that this guy's the best player in the competition. I've gone Bontempelli as my number 1 pick for the Brownlow. Most years, that is the case. I think I had him number 1 last year going into the season. At the end of the previous season, I had him number 1, and he didn't win it. He came 2nd or 3rd or whatever he came. He's an absolute gun. He gets plenty of the ball. He kicks goals. He's tall, so the umpires shouldn't miss him. Granted, he does have a lot of good midfielders around him in there with Libba, Nowed, Richards, Adam Treloar that take votes off him. But, I mean, he is the best player in the competition in my eyes. He certainly was last year and probably the year before that as well. So I think Bontempelli's my pick again at the moment. Although I'm certainly worried that the umpires once again won't even acknowledge that he exists, let alone that he's an awesome player. Other opportunities for Brownlows, obviously Paddy Cripps absolutely steamrolled it last year. There's every chance that he wins a 3rd, which would be crazy. He's a very talented player. Nick Dacos, of course, is always going to be around there if he stays fit and healthy all year. Last year, he was kind of the one-man band for Collingwood for a lot of the season, and a major reason why they were still kind of competitive and a chance to play finals up until the last few weeks. So he's every chance, if he's developed any more than he had already, he will certainly be very close to a Brownlow. He's played 3 seasons, and the last 2 he's finished equal 3rd and then 2nd last year. So he'll be up there. Other players, obviously there's Sydney will be an interesting one. Last year they probably could have had the Brownlow medalist if they didn't have so many good midfielders performing. If they lose any of them due to injury, that will really open up the opportunity for the others. Errol Goulden is a proven vote getter. Last 2 seasons has been outstanding in the vote tallies. Chuck in Isaac Heaney last year was fantastic. Chad Warner also got a lot of votes. So that between those 3, If any of them go down, it will really open the door for the other two possibly to be right up there. Especially Errol Goulden, because he is a proven vote getter already early on in his career. Other players, other teams that potentially have Brownlow medalists lurking in the shadows. Obviously, Caleb Sarong from Fremantle. I think they're going to have a really good season this year. I think he's the most likely of the Fremantle midfielders to be competitive in a Brownlow medal sense. The other two main ones that they've got in there in Hayden Young and Brayshaw both potentially could. Hayden Young more likely than Brayshaw, but I think Sarong is that most standout midfielder for that team. So I think he's a chance to be right up there in there, getting votes. Brisbane, Lachie Neale's proven that he's got 2 Brownlows, so he's definitely good enough for a Brownlow. I don't think Will Ashcroft is just there yet. I think another season or 2. Maybe 2026 is the year that he starts to really take over the league. Obviously, he won a Norm Smith last year, so he's a very good player. We just haven't seen a full season from him yet, so I'd like to see a full season before I go predicting him to win a Brownlow. Next up, who else is there from some competitive teams? I don't think there's anyone from Geelong that we'll see winning a Brownlow. The most likely, in all honesty, is Jeremy Cameron, maybe. Other teams, I'm trying to think through. Jordan Dawson was my pick from Adelaide last year, but Adelaide were terrible and he was not as good as he was the year before, so I don't have high hopes for him for 2025, although I do really rate him still. GWS Tom Green will be up there. You'd imagine he polls pretty well consistently. Gold Coast have multiple players. I don't see any of them winning it. Matt Rowell will probably be the highest. Kangaroos, Sheasel will probably poll more votes this year, getting more midfield time, but there's no one on that list that I would be confident in picking at this point of the year. Melbourne, Petrarca and Oliver. If Oliver's as fit as he looks like he is, he could be someone that polls quite a few votes this year. Petrarca always polls well. Mark Scorn also, so those 3. Port Adelaide, it'll be the midfielders. If Horne-Francis develops like we expect him to do this year and become an absolute elite midfielder, look for him to poll really well, because he will poll exceptionally well if he's getting 28, 30 touches a game and kicking multiple goals. Watch out, Brownlow medal, because he could be an absolute smoky in that regard. We spoke about Sydney St Kilda. I don't think they have anyone that's Brownlow contention. I'd like to see a much more attacking style of football from the club before I started predicting anyone from there winning a Brownlow. West Coast, not really. Not this year. Harley Reid will probably pick up some votes, but not enough to be competitive this year. In a few years' time, maybe. And as we said, the Bulldogs, I've gone Bontempelli, but there's a whole gang of midfielders behind him that are very, very good as well. So that's the Brownlow picks. We'll jump into my Coleman medal, and I've gone Jeremy Cameron, which is maybe a little bit of a surprise packet. Bring back his best. He wasn't that far off the Coleman last year, in all honesty. I think Geelong are going to be better this year than they were last year, and they are at their best when he's kicking goals. He's someone that can get 20, 25 touches and kick you 5+ goals in a game. He can kick them from anywhere. Geelong are probably at their best when a lot of people are kicking goals, but they have relied on him to kick goals to get them over the line in many a game as well. I just don't see anyone else in that forward line taking goals away from him, in all honesty. So I have him on top as my Coleman medal prediction for 2025 at the moment. My second and third picks, Charlie Curnow from Carlton. He's always up there, up close to the top. He won 2 in a row, and then last year he almost won his 3rd in a row. Got injured with a few weeks to go. Was second at that time, but was still potentially still in the race. So he could have been someone that Could have been going for his fourth in a row quite easily here, and I would imagine he will be very close to the top at the end of the season. Ben King might be a little bit more of a surprise, but his goals per game is outstanding. He's probably reaching about that peak age now where he should really take off as a key forward. So I think he's the better of the King brothers in terms of goal kicking, and if Gold Coast are to play finals, he is a big chance to be up there in the Coleman. He wasn't that far off last year. He is someone that could definitely kick 60 plus goals in a season, so I wouldn't write him off for Coleman at all. A couple other smoky picks. I mean, Mackay's won one before, so you can't completely write him off. He was better, a much straighter kick last year than he was the year before. Fremantle have a couple good key forwards in a miss. So they're potentially, and Tracy, sorry, I was trying to think of the other one. So those two will both be quite good up there too. Waterman had a great breakout season last year, so he'll potentially be up there again if he's improved at all. But yeah, I've gone Jeremy Cameron as my number one, with Curnow and Ben King as second and third. We'll jump into best recruit. This is open slather, really. There's a lot of good players that changed clubs in 2025. I've gone Dan Houston just because he's a two-time All-Australian and probably, in all honesty, the one that people should be expecting to do really well. Obviously misses opening round for Collingwood, but after that he'll be straight in and trying to show why he was highly sought after. I think he is the best player that was that did change club in the off season. So I think he's the one that should be the best recruit. Whether he actually is or not, we'll see. A couple others. I mean, there's a whole list of players that will be really good. Bailey Smith is obviously an absolute steal for Geelong. He'll go straight into the midfield. You'll see him play a lot of game time, so he could also be an absolute gun this year. Daniel Rioli off the half-back flank for Gold Coast, I think, will be really good. Both of Adelaide's picks from GWS in Cumming and Peatling absolutely have, like, the sky's the limit for those two. They both have a lot of potential. I was a really big fan of James Peatling all of last year, so I kind of expect him to be really good for Adelaide with a bit more opportunity than what he got at GWS. He played an absolute outstanding game. I can't think of which one it was last year, but it might have been against Sydney maybe. But yeah, he played an absolutely fantastic game and just showed the world how good he is. So if he can do that on a consistent basis, watch out. AFL, he'll be absolutely fantastic. Stringer up to GWS is another potential one. He could kick 50 plus goals and be absolutely huge for that GWS forward line that's already got a lot of weapons. So to add another one in there could be huge for them. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's any others. There probably are some that I'm missing, but that's the breakdown of probably the most likely ones, I think, to be the best recruit of 2025. We now jump into the Rising Star. And to be honest, this is always the hardest one to predict. And I personally think this year might be the hardest year to pick it, to be completely honest with you. I've gone Josh Smiley from Richmond. He's under a bit of an injury cloud at the moment, but he's going to get plenty of games. He's going to play probably 18 plus games, provided he stays healthy. He's someone that's probably going to get quite a bit of midfield time in there as well. So I can see him averaging 20 plus touches a game. If he does get those consistent games. So he's someone that I can see being right up there in the votes. Levi Ashcroft, his job security is not as good as Josh Smiley this year. He's probably, I think, the best talent in the draft, but there's just so much depth in that Brisbane lineup that it's going to be hard for him to consistently play games. He'll probably get the 10 to 15, depending how he's going, of course. If he's an absolute star straight away, he'll play the whole season and win the Rising Star. Billy Dowling is someone that's not a first-year player. I'm pretty sure he's still eligible for a Rising Star nomination. I can see him taking off this year. Lawler from Richmond, the number 1 pick, is obviously a chance. He will be playing from round 1. He's not as big a ball winner, but he will probably play quite a lot of games. And there'll be a little bit of responsibility on his shoulders because they don't have as much depth at Richmond as other clubs. Then you look at someone like Jagger Smith, who everybody's talking about as the best ball winner in the draft from last year. So he's probably, if he gets enough games, which in all honesty he probably does, he could be someone that averages quite a lot of touches, especially in that Carlton midfield. If he's getting a lot of midfield time around the Paddy Cripps and the Sam Walsh, they're going to be taking all the heat, and it will really allow him to win that ball and get quite a lot of it. He's someone that's been a prolific ball winner all his junior career, especially in the under-18s last year. So look for him to really, really be up there as well, as long as he's getting consistent games. There's a whole list of other draft picks and people that are still eligible that could be a chance. We might go into them a bit more just before the season starts. Once we've seen these practice games are going to be huge for Rising Star predictions and first year players and stuff, just to see who's getting game time, who's looking really good at senior level straight away. So they're my picks at the moment, but as I said, things could change quite a lot, quite quickly over the coming 2 or 3 weeks. Next up, we're going to look at breakout season, and I've gone for some interesting ones here. Xavier Dersma is my number 1 pick for breakout season. I think a couple of years ago he was really good. His year last year at Essendon showed some hints of good. It wasn't as good as he's shown previously. I think he bounces back and has a career year this year. He's going to be very important for the Dons, I think, in my opinion. If he can take it to the next level, he will be really beneficial. And for the Bombers, they need players to step up. There's no doubt about it. They had too many players that just weren't quite at the AFL level on a consistent basis in 2024, and that's probably what cost them a couple wins, in all honesty. So players like Dersma stepping up and going above where they need to be will be what is the difference maker for Essendon if they're to play finals. So he's my number 1. As I mentioned before, James Peatling as a really good recruit. I think he turns it on this year at Adelaide. I think he's going to get every opportunity to be an absolute star. Look for him week in, week out. He'll be getting plenty of the ball. He tackles well, he uses it well, so watch out for him to have a breakout season and have a career best year in 2025. I've also put Ollie Hollands in there. I think we'll see a great season from him. He's right at that age and experience level where he could really take off as a footballer this year. So look out for that as well. I'm just spitballing here. I don't think I have any others from any other teams off the top of my head. There would be plenty of opportunities for every team to have a couple players that are breakout seasons this year. We'll probably look deeper into that as we get to maybe the last episode or 2 before the season officially starts. We might look at breakout seasons for every club, because you could easily talk 20 minutes on every team, basically, just about all the players that are potentially going to break out in 2025. We'll now jump into the team slider of the competition, and I've put Bulldogs as the most likely to slide. So I'm going to do sliders and climbers. Sliders are teams that were in the 8 last year that have dropped out, or going to drop out, sorry. They haven't yet. And then my climbers are teams that weren't in the top 8 that I think are most likely to move into the top 8. So my sliders, I've gone Bulldogs as most likely. And that's no knock on them. It's a tight competition. They've been a team that's very inconsistent over the recent years. Their best is as good, if not better, than anyone else in the AFL. Unfortunately, they don't perform at their best every week, or even close to their best every week. They have some absolute stinkers, and that cost them a couple spots on the ladder last year, which then meant that they were playing an MCG elimination final against Hawthorn, which they didn't show up to, and they got eliminated. If they had got an extra couple wins, made it into the qualifying finals, who knows what could have happened. But they're just a team that looks really good on paper, looks really good some weeks, but then other weeks just don't show up. So that concerns me. They haven't really added a heap to their list, in all honesty. They've got a couple injury concerns early already, so their start of the season could be really tough. I just think that they are a team that potentially will drop this year. I think they're the most likely of the teams that played finals last year to not play finals in 2025. The next most likely would be Port Adelaide, which is a big call because they are a team that has some absolute guns on their list. They obviously finished second in the home and away season last year, but the 8 from last year all look like they're going to be pretty good again, and I can see some chinks in the Port Adelaide armour. Their whole forward line is a little bit of a concern. Their back line's not outstanding. Their midfield is where they dominate, but they also need to find a consistently number one ruckman that's really good and can be that number one ruckman week in, week out. So they're the two most likely teams I can see sliding. Obviously, it's hard to see Brisbane after winning the premiership dropping out of the 8, but I mean, everyone would have said that about Collingwood last year, so you never know. As I said, Geelong I have high hopes for. I think Carlton have a pretty easy run, plus a pretty good team, so they should improve. Sydney, I know they failed last year, but they're a team that just keeps coming. They've still got an absolute A-class list, so they should be up there. Hawthorn are improving. I think they finish about the same again. I don't see them going into the top 4 in all honesty, but you never know. Who else was in the top 8 last year? GWS, they're probably my third team to fall, based on the fact that they're not as deep as they were last year. They've still got that high level of talent, but they did lose quite a lot of talent as well over the off-season, so their depth is gone. If they have some injuries to crucial players, all of a sudden they might be struggling to perform. So they're a team that I could potentially see dropping. But I mean, any team that cops injuries might struggle this year. Have I said all of the teams? I think so. Maybe yes, no. Yeah, I think that's all of them. So yeah, they're most likely. Bulldogs, Port Adelaide, and then if you had to twist my arm for a third, it would be GWS, I reckon. Now we'll look at our climbers, and I've already mentioned this team today as a potential minor premier / premiership team. It's the Fremantle Dockers. In all honesty, they should have been playing finals last year. They fell apart in that last 4 weeks. They went from top 4 spot with 4 games to go, not winning one of those last 4 and finishing 10th on the ladder, which is crazy. They're another team that has a really good list. They were in 2024 the best clearance team in the competition by an absolute mile. No one could get close to their clearance numbers throughout the season. Their midfield's absolutely dominant. Sarong, Brayshaw, Young. They've got 2 good ruckmen, so even when Darcy's injured, Jackson can he can hold his ground at least. He's not outstanding, but he can certainly hold his ground. They have 2 outstanding key forwards. They've added some more smaller forwards around them. They've got some good run from the back line. They're just a team that on paper really looks like they're shaping up quite nicely. So I don't see them missing finals at all. I don't see them losing too many games at home in 2025. And they will be a handful for most teams on the road too. I think if they can really get that going, they will be dangerous this year. Other teams that I think are most likely to rise up into the 8, I think Adelaide are a chance. They've added some crucial pieces to their list this year. With Peatling coming in, they obviously found Saligo grew last year. If he can grow again, that will be huge for them. They're just a team that, without being much better on paper, but slightly better, I just feel like they're a team that's developing into a team that should play finals in 2025. I did say the same thing about them last year. They were my risers last year, my number 1 pick to go up the ladder, and they let me down hugely. So I shouldn't get ahead of myself, but I think they are primed for a big 2025. I think they start their season against St Kilda in Adelaide. Big game. If they can win that against a team that's kind of in that same boat, down towards the bottom, in that bottom 6 range, that want to rise up into the top 8, that is a huge game for them. If they can knock St Kilda off week 1, it would be massive. If they lose that, though, they're done. I'm done with Adelaide officially if they lose that one. Collingwood I can see going up, obviously. They've put all their eggs in the basket of 2025. They want to win it again. So they're a team that should be probably playing finals in 2025. If they don't, it will be very disappointing for them. So, they're my 3rd team. But in all honesty, outside of the 3 teams that came bottom 3 last year on the ladder, I could technically see any of the rest of them playing finals in 2025. It's going to be a close competition, in all honesty, and any of them could play finals. I'm not sure exactly which way it will go at the moment. A lot of it's going to come down to injuries at the right time, playing teams when you're fully fit, and then also heading into finals, getting all your good players on the park at the right time, and being high enough on the ladder that you can play finals as well. Brisbane came from 5th last year to win the premiership, so you don't necessarily have to be in that top 4. You just need to have fitness, players on the park, all things going your way momentum wise, heading into September to be a chance to win the premiership. So that's pretty much all my predictions for 2025 at the moment. I hope you enjoyed. I know there's some controversial takes probably in there, but my thoughts and opinions may change a little bit over the coming weeks, but overall I think they're my thoughts at the moment. I'll release final thoughts heading into that final week before the season starts. Podcast is going to 2 episodes a week as of next week, so check all of them out if you haven't already. I do appreciate you. What else do I have to say? Hit 100 subs on YouTube this week, so thanks for that. Let's keep pumping that number up. If you haven't already, go hit that button. We post on TikTok every day. We're going to be posting lots of tweets /X, whatever they call them. Instagram, we got all them, so go follow everywhere. YouTube, there's season previews for every club going out every day, so go check them out. If you haven't already, jump in the comments. Let me know your thoughts about 2025. We'll be back next week with another 2 episodes of the podcast, so come back. We're going to be reviewing games. Finally, there's football, so we'll be reviewing them. Come back then. Catch us on the next one.